Welcome to the Payroll Test Tool, which forms part of the SAP Payroll Testing Service from Strategic Data Solutions. The tool has been developed in order to facilitate testing of payroll results after the introduction of a change within the system. This could be as a result of a custom wage type update, HRSP note applications, or a larger project implementation. Changes that have been introduced will affect payroll results, and the Payroll Test Tool makes it easy to test the changes and their effect on payroll results by first reading in the source data, then applying the change and reading in the target data. As you can see, the layout of the screens is very familiar to anybody that is familiar with the use of SAP. In order to work through the tool, one would follow the steps in sequential order from creating the projects, creating the tests that go with the projects, extracting the source and confirming this to lock it down. Then the changes would be applied and the target data would be extracted. The results between the two of source and target data are then compared, and once all comparisons are run, the project is set to complete. Any results that are shown to be errors or failures from the comparisons can then be analyzed separately by the administration or the payroll team, or additional configuration can be implemented. Using the Payroll Test Tool make it simpler to see the implications of changes on payroll results across a wide range of change types. Any number of projects can be created, and these can be selected. These can either be selected from the managed projects or straight away from the header data. The header zone is always available at the top, so that when a project is selected, the details of that project are visible within the header zone and can be seen at any stage throughout the process. We'd like to show you the Payroll Test Tool by working through an example, creating a project, working through an example to the end in order to show you the functionality of the test tool itself. So now what I'd like to do is go through the first stage of the Payroll Test Tool, and this is Manage Projects. When we first click on it, you'll see that should you have any previous projects created, that these are all listed in the overview screen. The project that we've entered in the header zone is already highlighted, so you can immediately see where you are in the overview. You can do various different actions, perform various actions from this screen, and these actions are grouped together in these icons here. Hovering over these will show you the tooltip for each, so we can display or change a project, an existing project. We can copy an existing project in order to create a new one, or we can set a project to complete or delete the project. Deleting the project will also delete all of the associated test cases for that project. Likewise, if you copy an existing project, it will also copy all of the test cases for that project to the new project. Also on the overview screen, we have these display filtering buttons, which work the same as regular display filtering buttons, so you can display only those that are in specific statuses, as you can see from the overview, or you can select them all. The purpose of this demonstration is to show you how to create a project and work it through from start to finish. The particular scenario we're going to use is the creation of a project in order to test the application of HRSPs in August, for example. As a result of the application of the HRSPs, we're not actually expecting any changes to occur within the wage types that we will select, but we'll work it through and see if there are actually any changes coming through in order to copy a real-life scenario. So the first thing we'll do is click on Create. This brings up a blank screen, and also the header zone is also blanked out because we're creating a new project, so we don't want to see any details of any existing projects. We'll enter a description. The system ID and the system number for the source details are going to be the system within which we're working at the moment. And the target system, we're going to use the same system as well. The idea behind this being is this would be the scenario of a test system. We're going to run the payroll in the test system first before the HRSPs are actually applied to the system to get our source data. Then we'll be running payroll again once the HRSPs are applied, and this will form our target data, which will then be compared with the source data. If you're unsure of what to put in any of these fields, you can click on this information icon here, which will appear on a number of different screens throughout the Payroll Test Tool, and that will give you some information on the actual fields, what they display, and the kind of data you would be expected to enter in these fields. So this is a project we're going to create, and we just save that in order to create the project, and it will be allocated the next number in the sequence. And the next thing we need to do then is move on to manage tests. The Manage Tests screen allows you to create, edit and delete tests related to the projects with which you are working. The new project that we've created currently has no tests created, so the overview screen has no tests shown. If we were to choose a different project from the header zone, for example number 23, and press return, you will see that the tests relating to this project would then be visible, and these could be drilled into and displayed. Depending on the status of the project, the available options which can be used on the test cases are restricted. This particular project is completed, and so therefore we can only display the projects. Moving back to our current project, we'll go ahead and we'll create some new tests. Give it a description. And choose some employee numbers. This is a standard SAP personnel number selection range. This particular scenario, we're just going to enter one particular test case employee. Next, we need to enter all of the different wage types that we want to make comparisons for. This is done in the table below, and each wage type is made up of 3 different elements. First, the table from which the data is to be taken, either the results table or the cumulative results table. In the actual wage type field, as you can see, the standard 3 wage type fields. And next, a particular wage type. This can be chosen from the drop down, or if the wage type is actually known, it can just be manually entered. If multiple wage types are to be compared, these can all be entered at this stage. When all of the wage types have been entered, save changes, and this saves the changes and updates the data in the top right hand corner. For each test, it's also possible to enter an acceptable difference. This is done via the option up here, acceptable differences. Selecting this option takes us to the acceptable differences table, and again the information icon appears, clicking on which will show you information about the fields and the sort of data you'll be expected to enter for these. Test ID we're going to use in this particular case, we related it to test ID 1. The project ID will then be chosen from the drop down or entered manually. And the test ID, again, this is picked up from the actual project itself. The wage type field is entered here, and the wage type. The next option is a sign, so whether the difference is positive or negative, or if we're interested in a bracket either side of a specific value, we'll choose plus or minus. An acceptable difference is entered as an actual amount here, so it could be 100 or 10. Here we're going to enter a difference of £1. Anything above or below £1 as a difference between the source and target data, we need the test tool to highlight this so that we can investigate what the difference has been caused by. Once these are acceptable and all the acceptable differences have been entered, we would save the changes and go back. This would take us back to the test case overview. You can see here that there are 5 test cases that have been created for the one particular test, and this relates to the fact that there are 5 different wage types for one employee. So each one of these individual comparisons is one particular test case in the test that we have created. If we go back to the main screen and click on select the test and click change, we can add a second employee We would now expect each of the 5 wage type comparisons to be performed for 2 employees, and therefore, if we save the changes and go back to the main screen, you see the number of test cases is actually 10. Once we have the tests and the acceptable differences defined, we would move on to extract the source data. Selecting Extract Source reads the data from the source system as defined in the project, which can be seen in the header. The wage types which are defined in the test cases are red for the employees that have been defined. The output shown on the screen is the data that will be read. At this stage, the test cases can still be changed, as can the project, as the project is only in created status. The source data will not be extracted until the actual extract icon is clicked. You can see here we have the 2 individual employees for each of the wage types that we specified. And these are the values which are going to be read. We've run payroll, and this is the values that are stored in a results table in the payroll results for these 2 employees. For the test scenario that we have, this is the data that we want to extract, so we'll go ahead and we'll perform the extract icon by clicking on the Extract Source Data button at the top. This changes the status of the project to source extracted, as you can see in the header here, and also a confirmation message is given at the bottom of the screen. At this stage we could still change the data if we wanted to add wage types or add employees or make any other changes. Once we're sure that this is exactly the source data that we require, we will click on Confirm Source, which would give us a request to confirm that this is what we actually want to do. If we click on Yes, then the source data is locked and no changes can be made to the project either. The status of the project has now changed to Source Confirmed, as you can see in the header data. Following the scenario, we would now implement the HRSPs into the test system, for which we've already run payroll. We would then rerun payroll after the implementation in order to have the target data for comparisons further on down the project. So we've applied the HRSPs to the test system and we rerun payroll for our test employees. Clicking on the Extract Target icon shows the overview screen for the Extract Target results. This shows some header information for the number of cycles which have been run for the target extraction, who's run them and when the last one was run. The target data can be extracted multiple times and these are listed on the screen for each extraction that was made. Again, the extraction is not run until the icon is clicked, which we'll do now. Clicking on the icon changes the status of the project to target extracted, and again a confirmation message is provided. Once the target data is extracted, we can go ahead and compare the results, see if there are any changes following the implementation of the HRSPs. So now we are in the Compare Results section, which is the crux of the functionality provided by the Payroll Test Tool. You can see we have one line for the cycle, the first cycle that's been run for the comparisons. We have one test which we defined with the 10 test cases. As with the extract source and the extract target, the comparison has not been run until we click on the icon at the top of the screen. Immediately you will see that there is a summarized overview of each of the comparisons. We have 4 failures and 5 passes in this particular scenario. The results are output by test ID, sequentially by test ID and then by employee, and then working through the table you can see the fields and the wage types and the amounts which have been compared. The source and target values, which you will see here and here, are provided for comparison so that you can visually immediately see which was the source, which was the target, and the actual difference as well. We had an acceptable difference defined, which was £1 on the total gross. The result of £19.36 for this particular employee is outside of this acceptable difference, and therefore the test comparison has been marked as a failure in this particular instance. Were it within the value, you would have had the icon would have been showing as an acceptable difference. The warning icon is for those situations where an employee may have a value that is in the source data, which does then not occur in the target data once the changes have been applied. In addition, there is a final column here marked Notes, which can be used to create a note for each test case. And when one has been created, the icon is displayed in the final column, which can then be clicked on by any other person looking at the project in order to see the note which has been added. Any changes which are identified as a failure or even an acceptable difference can then be examined by the payroll administrator. The target results can then be re-extracted and the comparison rerun. Once all the comparisons are complete, one will click on Complete Project and a message would appear enabling the user to set the project to complete, after which no other changes could be made and no other comparisons could be run. This can be seen if we head back to Manage Projects. On the previous projects that have been completed, the status is set, and the status can be seen updated in the header zone as well. This concludes the demonstration of the SDS Payroll Comparison Tool. We hope that you have been able to see the benefits that this tool can bring to your company. It's also possible to set up future projects. You can create projects for future installations of HRSPs, for example. Or it would be also useful for testing any configuration changes where you'd only expect a configuration change and all other wage types values to remain the same. If you want any further information, please feel free to contact us, and we look forward to hearing from you. Thank you very much.